welcome to the Communication Workshop. I'm Abby Wick. I'm the NDSU Extension Soil Health Specialist. So I work primarily with farmers, with other educators, including our county agents and our CS organizations, anyone that brings information out to people that are going to put it on the ground. So that's my role at NDSU.
My name is Tim Hamrich. I work in communications consulting. I have been hosting the Soil Sense podcast along with Abby for the last over a year now, almost 2 years going on for that podcast, and I've been in communications for several years.
We're going to go to, making connection on farm. And I think that this is a really important thing, especially with most of us being agriculture communicators, on how do we make those connections. And so we brought on a couple of really great experts in this area, and I'm going to call them experts. I know it makes everybody a little uncomfortable to be called an expert, but we're bringing in Tim Becker, who is a farmer and also a retired NDSU extension agent. And I've ridden around and pick up with Tim, or you've also interviewed him for the podcast. And he's got a lot of excitement for extension, but then also that really great connection to what farmers need and want out of our system. And then Miranda Meehan, who is another one that you've interviewed for the podcast, and she was season 3.
Yeah, just recently.
And so Miranda's done a ton of work with county agents and really engaging in that area and bringing resources from main campus out to the county levels. And then Kim Melton with Wilkin Co Soil Conservation District. I just did a tour with Kim, maybe 2 months ago, and she just has a lot of passion for what she does. And so I'm excited for this panel. It's going to really come across well as far as making those connections. So I think, is everybody there? Miranda, Tim, and Kim?
I'm here.
Perfect. Well, I already kind of introduced you because I can't help myself, but let's start off with Miranda. Can you go into a little more of an introduction for yourself?
Sure. So I'm the Livestock Environmental Stewardship Specialist here at NDSU. I've been in this position about 5 years now, or almost 6, I guess. It goes fast. And so my position, I look at livestock environmental interactions. My research is fairly broad. I have a 65% extension appointment, 35% research. And things I focus on within that is reclamation, brine spill remediation, pipeline restoration specifically right now. We just started a big SARE funded project looking at livestock or integrated crop livestock systems, specifically looking at grazing management within those systems. And we're working with 6 different producers on that project. And so that was a really big undertaking this year, especially with some of the COVID challenges. And then I'm also looking at some riparian ecology, riparian grazing management, and how we can use that grazing as a tool to restore those systems right now.
Awesome. Thank you, Miranda, for being here. Every time I look at some kind of email coming out through NDSU, it's always Miranda's here, Miranda's doing this. She's just so engaged in a lot of different things. And then let's go to Tim for an introduction.
Hi, I'm Tim Becker. Recently retired about a year and a half ago from NDSU Extension as a county agent. I was county agent for 28 years, and I had an opportunity for an early retirement. So I took that opportunity and moved back home to the family farm. I was living there already, I guess, but just got a little more involved with the family farm. And I've been farming for the last year and a half with my brother, which I've been doing since 2000. So doing my passion now.
Awesome. I know that was a tough decision for you, Tim, to leave Extension, and I'm so glad that you're still participating in so many of the things that we're doing and engaging in that. So thank you for being here. And then Kim.
Hi, yes, Kim Melton. I am with the Wilkin Soil and Water Conservation District over in Wilkin County, Minnesota. I've been working in conservation for about 8 years now. I grew up on a farm east of Breck, and so I've always been involved in agriculture and being part of the farming industry. So it really was a good fit for me to just join a conservation district and keep working with farmers and programs and benefiting the soil while benefiting the landowner. We do a little bit of everything over here, depending on what's coming down the line. So we've been involved with tile water research lately. We've got a demo site kicking off showing different tillage treatment systems. We've got a soil health management program going on. We do septics. It's kind of a wide range of things going on over here, but we kind of go to fit the need of the landowner here in Wilkin.
Nice. Well, thank you all for being here. I'm trying to think, what should we start off with? Should we start off with maybe, a question to Tim on what are those, benefits of the connections and that common message. So all of you clearly work so closely with each other between NDSU and the conservation districts and farmers. And, how does that benefit you, Tim, as being on both, the farmer side, but then also the extension side, having that cohesive message and those connections working together?
Well, I found, and you and I've talked about this a lot, Abby, but, when I got started in extension, I found out one of the best things to do, as a new person in a county, I found, getting out, spending some time, you're working with the clientele is getting to know them. And, I found over the years that just getting in a vehicle and popping in cold call into people's farmyards and just saying, can I ride? If they're out in the combine, I found over the years, sometimes it was just fun to pull up to a field that a producer in my county that maybe didn't know real well and run up the combine, ask if I could ride a round or two with them and just get to know them. And for me, that connection for me was to really started over coffee. I'd go down, meet with 5, 6, 7 farmers in the morning, a local agronomist, and we'd have coffee in the morning. And it seemed like there was always those questions over coffee in the morning that would come up, and go back to the office, research that question, and the next day would have an answer for these guys. And you just get that camaraderie and get to know the people in your community and what they're really looking for. And then, with that, getting to know them so well, it based your programming moving forward, because you knew what they were looking for and the questions and the answers they were looking for. So it worked so nice to be able to try to build a program off of that. For me, I got a very good relationship with a local agronomist, and if you can't beat them, join them type of thing. I was kind of doing the same type of programming that he was, and we just found through having coffee with his group every morning, we got a good partnership, and the farmers saw that partnership that was going on between me and the local agronomist. And it was so easy to build a program and set up meetings, because they would come for the two of us that were putting this program on for them. And they saw us working together, not trying to be my program and your program. It ended up being our program. So we built a program based on that. So for me, to answer your question is, if you get to know the local people and they build that trust in you, it gets so much easier to build a program.
It was great to, it was great to have you both on the Soil Sense podcast. I think it was last season, season 2,
yes.
Talking about it. Such a unique collaboration. And what I think is really interesting there is how, building a bond with someone that wasn't a farmer, but was also focused on the same mission, was able to create so many more connections for you and build credibility. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I think Kim has done some similar things in her area where she works with a local consultant, a crop consultant, to really expand her program. Kim, can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I sure can. And I kind of noticed that when I would talk with farmers and you sit down and, you talk about a plan or, what are you comfortable with cover crops? Have you tried it? And, I got the trend of, let me talk to my agronomist, or let me see what my agronomist would think of that. And so after hearing that a lot, I kind of started thinking that, we should be meeting with these agronomists, because we got this program money coming in, and these guys would be a direct link to what farmers are doing. They know how it would fit, and they have a better idea, and they know the area too. And so we started putting together meetings with our local agronomists. And so we've got about 5 co-ops in the county and surrounding areas that work with farmers in Wilkin County. And so we started putting together yearly meetings. So in January, we usually host meetings and just kind of go over what we got for programs, how it would benefit, and how it could fit into their farming operation, which, like you said, Tim, too, is it helps us mold our program. We have a soil health program coming down the line here. And so that really helps us kind of kick around too and say, what would it cost, or what would it take to get these guys, what kind of payment per acre to get them to pick up a soil health program and try to integrate that into their farming operation.
And now, Miranda, you have your own connections that you use too, even though they're within the NDSU extension organization, but you work really closely with county agents, and that's your kind of pathway to get onto those farms or ranches. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so I mean, you've heard from a couple of our county agents, and we have amazing county agents. They're all passionate about what they do, and they're local, they're part of that community, and so they have relationships with those farmers and ranchers in that community. And so it's really important for me because I'm covering the whole state, or supposed to be covering the whole state. So for me to utilize them, and not only just to get to know people through them, but also they have getting to know what's going on across the state, the issues in different parts of the state, and so I can direct my programming appropriately. And so one of the things I really tried to do is build that relationships with those county agents and be a resource for them. So developing trainings, so they're confident when they're going out to engage with those producers on the different topics within my programming area, whether it's setting some stocking rates for them or helping them determine what cover crop mix that they should plant if they're going to graze it. So they have those resources and the confidence to engage. And then also doing some smaller research type projects, but more at the local level, just to give them a reason to go out and have those conversations if they're not as brave as Tim to just go walk up to somebody that they don't know and hop in the combine with them. So give them a reason to go out and engage with those people in their county so that those people see them as a resource. And through them, then I become a resource. In addition to those county agents, working with people like Kim, our local soil conservation districts, NRCS, so that when we're all on the same page, giving the same message to people when we're talking to them, and so we're not confusing them by using different messaging.
And I want to touch on that a little bit more, Tim, with the kind of coming by and hopping in the combine, riding in the combine. In this time of COVID, a question that's come up several times today is, how do we make connections with farmers with social distancing? So maybe you could speak as a farmer, how would you prefer to be approached by people, right now in this sort of time we're in?
Well, as a producer right now, I don't know if I'd feel real comfortable with somebody sitting in a combine with me, but, certainly at the end of the field, outside, and where you can keep a little bit of social distance, I guess I wouldn't have any problem with that. It gets to be a little more challenging, but again, as a producer, I like to see people out in the field with me. Miranda will probably talk about that too when, she'd set up her programs. It gave us opportunities to meet with farmers and meet on their ground. They don't want to always see you as that person in the office. I'm sure Kim would say the same thing, that, if we're always in the office, that's all we are, is that guy or that gal in the office. And when we come out to their farm, we're on their turf. And I think that goes just a long ways to getting that relationship with the producer, is when you can meet with them on their turf and, and be one of them for a while. And that's the relationship. But with COVID, it's going to, hopefully one of these days we get over COVID, but right now with it, we got to deal with what it is and throw the mask on where you have to. And other than that, if you can do things outside so you can keep some distance, I think you can work through these things.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a big challenge. I think, throwing the mask on, being outside, especially going into winter, how are we going to do this and have our winter meetings? So Tim, that's encouraging to hear that you still want some of those one-on-one interactions from your county agents to come out to the farm and to make those connections, because you can make it work. Trust. That's the biggest thing I think we can build. And you guys are talking about this relationship building with those farmers in your areas. And how do you, say you're a new agent and you're going out there to meet with farmers, how do you build that trust other than stepping foot on their farm? Are there other things that you could be doing to help create that trust with those individuals? And I guess, I should say who we're going to go to. I'm starting to fade at the end of the day. But let's go to Kim maybe and see what you think on how do you build trust with your growers?
Yeah, it's there's a line to overstepping and trying to do too much, and then there's a line where you maybe not do enough. I know the first time I was graced with the project or funding, there's 12 landowners. That was our target area, and I called those first 3 and hey, this is Kim Melton. I got an opportunity for you, and we've found a spot on your land, and I'd love to help you fix that. No, thanks, I'm good. Same with the first 3 calls. And I went to my boss and I said, Don, I shouldn't be doing this because these landowners, you know, they're not interested. I can't do this. And he was like, what's your pitch? And I gave it to him. He said, you know, you need to change your angle, and you know, let's show them what it looks like, and maybe meet with them out there and talk as a preventive standpoint, and let them know that we only have this money for a couple of years, and that this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. Like, it's now or never. And so I went back and called the rest of the 12, and I said, you know, can I meet you on your land? Can I show you what this is going to look like? And let's see what's going on out there. And, you know, I got yes, yes, yes from the rest of them. And I went back to the first 3 and called them, and they said yes, yes, yes. And so meeting them in that field, showing them what it's going to look like, being the contact for trust, it's going to be, you got to answer that phone, and you got to be able to be like, yep, you can trust me. Because I've had many of them look at me and say, I'm trusting you on this. And so you got to be the one, that resource, that you're going to pick up that phone when they need you to. It might be a Saturday afternoon, but you got to pick up your phone and reassure them that, yep, this is what's going on from start to finish. Paint them that good picture that shows them exactly what's going to happen, and take away any uncertainty that they're going to have with that project. And then pretty soon they're calling you for another spot in another field. And then the neighbor heard about this, and he's got a spot that he'd like you to look at. And so it kind of snowballs. And then pretty soon your reputation grows in the county. And then the farmers do contact you more because it went good and it went smoothly. And so our job is here to make their life easier. And so what I can do to help them out, it might take more time on my half, you know, maybe babysitting them a little bit through some of these things and getting the paperwork done. But in the end, it's going to help you to get more projects on the ground and have more landowners to work with in the future.
Nice. Well, I know, Miranda, this question's for you. We also need to build trust with agents. And as specialists, sometimes whether you're starting as a new specialist or you've been in your position for a while and you feel like you just haven't made that effort to connect with the county agents, how have you built such great trust with our county extension in your area?
The biggest thing was starting a lot of those projects where the extension agents could go out and meet with producers and giving them a reason to get out there, and empowering them. And you know, we had protocol that went through the project, so they knew what they were getting into. They knew the expectations. It was clear. But then throughout that project, you know, being a really good resource, being responsive if they had a question, getting back to them right away. So a good example is what we did one a few years back, looking at grazing readiness. County agents went out, and every week they were IDing 4 different grasses and then looking at the growth stage of those grasses. And most of them don't have a range background. So plant ID, when it comes to pasture plants, isn't a strong point. And so really stepping them through that plant ID process and building their confidence in IDing plants when they're out there. And so that was a really, really good experience. And you know, some of it was I was getting text message. We were FaceTiming to figure out what these plants were. Or even I went and did some one-on-one trainings with a couple agents. And so not only just building their skill set so that they're better able to serve the producers in their counties. Was I think that was one of the best ways that I built relationships, and just being responsive and listening to them so that we know what's going on in their counties and can help address those questions and issues.
And staying on this topic of trust here, Tim, this is for you. Obviously, it's easier to build trust when all things around the project are going well or go well. What happens when things, you know, maybe are out of your control and they don't go well? How do you continue to build trust through that?
Well, you know, you got to be honest and upfront with guys when things aren't going well, and I think, you know, that's part of that building trust with them. I mean, when you're upfront and honest and don't hide things, and you know, tell it like it is, guys can take that. I mean, people will accept that. If things aren't working out the way they are, you know, let them know right away. I mean, it gets back into that building trust. They want to know that they can trust you through the good and the bad of projects and things when they're going on. And you know, you'd asked the question earlier too about that trust is just like Kim had said, always answering that phone when they do call, getting an answer for them as soon as you can, and you know, give them an honest, true answer, and just everything that you do, you got to be honest and upfront with people, and whether, like I said, it's going good or bad, you know, just be upfront with them.
So one of the things that we know too about making connections on farm is on-farm demonstrations. So creating those opportunities for farmers in an area to see how these practices may work. And I'd like to go back to Kim on this one because I toured some of your on-farm demonstration sites, and to know how do you make that successful for each specific grower that you're working with?
I feel it's really important to find out what they've got going on, what they're comfortable with, what kind of equipment they have. You don't want them to have to go out and buy something because that's what someone else used. And so I think when you're looking at being more specific per site, it's going to be what they're comfortable with, have they done it before, and what they're going to grow up to. We got lucky enough that I found a farmer that is as curious as I am if strip till and no till in these clay soils is something we should be moving towards. And so we are starting up a 5-year demo site here. We laid some strips down this fall, but we've got a 60-acre piece, and the landowner let us divide it into they're each split into 20s, and the 20s are split into 10. So it's cover crop versus no cover crop with no till, strip till, and conventional till that we're going to use to assess the soil and how it changes over those 5 years. It's going to be really cool and something that you guys are going to want to follow. We got a lot of collaboration on it. We've got General Mills and Will Rich and a lot of local co-op support and people that are just as curious, because we are blessed with these amazing soils here in the Red River Valley. And yes, they are very forgiving, but to what point, how long, how much depletion can they stand until you get to that pivot point where now they're compacted and unproductive and saline? And we want to stop them before they get to that point. And so if we can get an incentive program going on based on what works in our area, it's hard when you say, yeah, in southern Minnesota that works, or central Minnesota that works. And okay, way over there in the hills that works. But for us in the valley, this thick black soil that we have, it is its own beast of burden at times because it doesn't dry out well. And so to bring on soil health practices, it's a change, and everybody's kind of scared of change, but to some embrace it and some not so much. So they want to see it work on somebody else's. And so slowly but surely, we've got a lot that are trying new cover crops. And so it's an exciting time to be in conservation right now, because I feel like, we got rid of that moldboard plow, and that took a long time. But if we can keep this pattern going in the right direction, open eyes to what's going on in the soil and what's going to benefit them, and sustainable, that's definitely the goal.
And so say you don't have all those cooperators and the funding to set up one of those on-farm demos. I think, Tim, you've done a really good job of just going to different fields and looking at practices farmers are already using and coordinating tours in that way.
Yeah, we've taken producers and find a group of producers. And I think this sometimes came from that group of guys having coffee, is you start talking about who's doing what and who's trying what where, and then setting up a tour and just throwing them in a vehicle and going around and looking at what those producers are doing. And sometimes you throw 2-3 other guys in the vehicle with you and let's go look at it. And a lot of times you can talk these guys into trying some things that they've maybe been very reluctant to do, just by showing them somebody else's what they're doing. And then, having that discussion with them and saying, hey, if you want to try some of this. And sometimes you get a whole different idea that grows out of it, and they start trying something. And it's just kind of fun to share. Sometimes you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You just need to show people what other people are doing and just working with them. And like Kim said, a lot of my work was done around soil health and no-till and cover crops and that type of thing. And we had guys that, absolutely refused to even look at cover crops because they thought it was a waste of money. And 2-3 years later, you have them trying some things. And all of a sudden you have them out grazing those things. And then they got ideas that they're trying to share with you, at a meeting, and they're willing to stand up and talk about it a little bit and get some excitement. And it's kind of fun when you just start working and getting a good relationship with producers, and they're willing to try things for you and start working and share their information with other people. So one of the funnest, and I've shared this with you before, Abby, is is I used to call it my weekly telephone call from a certain individual in the county. And, he was somebody that was kind of a hermit that didn't like to get out in front of people, but he loved it when you came out and visited him at his farm. And you knew you had him when he'd say, and bring that other character with you, which was the agronomist that I had a program with. And so whenever I came out, he wanted me to bring the other guy with me because he wanted both of us there. And so it's just showed that building that relationship. And usually it was, he had a conversation with the NRCS guy that had an idea. And so now all three of us were out there and trying to build a program and ideas for him. And so, it's just that relationship of getting to know and building that trust that, we can offer something with the government programs and the extension programs and the agronomists that may be supplying the seed. We can offer something to them, and we're not looking for anything from them. We have their taxpayer dollars are paying for us, and we have stuff that we can offer them to help make their life and their business better. And so, that's what we're all trying to build for.
Great. I think, Tim's hitting on some themes that we've talked about today that I think you're seeing in a great practical context here. Things like meeting people on their own terms. So this grower that doesn't want to, go to the meetings, but he wants people showing up on their farm. And then also just being part of the conversation, these coffee shop visits, just hanging out at the coffee shop and making that connection that time. They're not asking you to come there as a keynote speaker. You're part of the community and making a real connection, not just talking at people. Miranda, I know you mentioned earlier covering the entire state of North Dakota. How do you, once you're starting a project, let's say, how do you keep that communication going? How do you know how often to communicate with people without bugging them, but also building that trust over time?
I think you've got to become comfortable with the fact that it's okay to bug people and follow up with them. They actually like that. As a specialist, as an agent, we have a lot on our plates. We're balancing a lot of different things. So those reminders are really nice. And I think our farmers and ranchers are no different. They have a lot going on. We really found that with our grazing trial this year, especially with some of the challenges we had getting it up and going. And so that constant conversations, before we started, we had an in-person meeting with everybody in January. So before everything blew up. But then following that, we went and did one-on-one farm visits to kind of get an idea of what was going to work as far as setup for them, where we need to put water, fences, those type of things. And then also just after we put the grazing plan together and got cows out there, I would send them text reminders a couple days ahead of time that you need to, just a reminder that you need to move your cows, and then ask after they moved them, how do things look? Do we need to move them sooner, or is the plan working for you? How can we adjust? So making sure we have constant conversation going back and forth so that they're having a good experience being part of this project, and we're getting the information that we need and want to share with others, and hopefully they'll work with us in the future. Another thing with this project kind of goes back to what Tim was just talking about, is this demonstration project. We're working with 4 of the 6 producers had never grazed cover crops before. And so we really wanted to be hands-on and make sure they didn't have questions, but they've been interested in it, and being part of this project reduced the risk for them because we covered a lot of the costs and helped them get the infrastructure in place. And so these projects are a good opportunity for people that are interested in adapting a new practice, but maybe a little nervous about it.
And so I want to remind people we have about 15 minutes left in this session, and Tim and I can keep asking questions all day, but I want to make sure that we're answering your questions. And so if you could put questions in the Q&A, questions in the chat, I think we all are, need advice or information on how do we make those connections, because that's clearly what everything boils down to in soil health and extension and communication, is making connections. And I think sometimes, asking individuals that are doing this and doing it very successfully, like Tim and Miranda and Kim, and that can be really helpful. So if you can, throw some questions in the Q&A or in the chat. Otherwise, Tim and I will keep asking questions. But I do want to give you guys an opportunity to ask some questions. I'll make one comment, and this is to Tim, is that I was fortunate for a couple of those times to go out with Tim and his agronomist friend to that relatively quiet farmer. And Tim warned me beforehand. He said, listen, we're going to go out and see him. And he's, not many people go to his farm. If we have a field day there, he doesn't even attend the field day and all that kind of stuff. But But as a specialist, when I could go in to visit with that farmer who's doing incredible things, and be vouched for by the county agent and by the agronomist to say, listen, she's good, she's with us. That was a huge stamp of approval that got me on a farm that I maybe would have never gotten on before. So, so I think that's a really useful tool for specialists, for researchers, for anyone that wants to get better access to these farms, is working through the county agent, working through the agronomist or consultant, working through the conservation district to get your boots on that field.
Again, along similar lines, I know Kim had mentioned earlier, kind of doing the same thing. Kim, maybe you could talk about, there's a lot of people in extension that are in the audience. How should they reach out to make connections with somebody like yourself to sort of join forces on something like this?
My contact information is on here, but no matter where you are, there's going to be a soil conservation district, or there's going to be an NRCS office. And don't be scared to reach out to them, because they can get their hands on a lot of grant money. And the hard thing is every office is different. So not every office is going to be as proactive or as eager to get out and find grant money or be comfortable writing a grant, because that takes a lot of time. They're very time consuming, and there's a lot of reporting that goes with it. But if they have the knowledge and know-how to get over that hurdle, it's not hard. And once you get it, it's a huge step in the door. It's a huge step for your landowners to even be able to get that money and to put that money back on the ground in your county. There's a lot of websites. Facebook, I think every district is on Facebook or has Twitter account. I don't know of any of them that don't have a website. So even just Googling the website or looking up your local NRCS office, they usually collaborate together, and it's a big one. We work hand in hand with our NRCS, and they are a very valuable player, because what they can provide for funding, then we can match up to 75%. So at the same time, they can help stretch our dollars, so we can get more projects funded if you are working with your NRCS. So, and that's a good thing. That's a good question to bring up, Tim, in that we can definitely have that relationship with any farmer that has any question. And I tell that repeatedly to landowners. I'm just like, if you're thinking about doing anything, I was like, we like to plan. And so you need to come into the office and let's plan. Are you looking at grazing cover crops? Are you looking at rotational grazing? Are you looking at maybe trying some strip till or cover cropping? And, what can we do to help you fit into a program and help you get some of that funding right here in the county?
Well, Tim, I know these morning coffee clubs can be kind of exclusive. How can someone break in? How do you become one of the regulars at the local coffee at the gas station or the coffee shop or wherever it might be?
We found that it was always the same group of people, but it rotated. There would be some people would show up one day a week, some that would show up. We had up to 8 farmers some mornings. Sometimes less, be 2 or 3, but it rotated. People would be stopping in the morning to pick up some chemical for the day, and they were in a hurry and were going to pick up a couple jugs of something, and ended up sitting for an hour. Well, then you start seeing them show up a little bit more and a little bit more. And, as a extension agent, when it first started, I used to start to think, should I really be here? I'm on the clock right now, and I'm sitting here drinking coffee. And that hour in the morning, you found you got more work done in that hour in the morning than you did the rest of the day, because you were going back to the office and looking up those answers. And that's the information that was getting out. And that's how you were building your program and your clientele. But, again, back to what we were talking about is getting to where the people are at. They don't always want to see you in the office. And I think you need to get out and just be a community member sometimes and doing things with them. And I was going to jump in a little bit on, if you let me, on Kim's, what she was talking about with her extension or her NRCS programs. A number of years ago, we had an NRCS guy that used to tell me that, we really can't coach people into our programs. We can tell them about our programs. We can help them get set up in the programs. And so as an extension agent, I got really well versed on CSP and EQIP and some of those funding programs. And when you start talking with producers on cover crops, as a producer and as an extension agent, I could really help coach them. So I ended up being NRCS's probably best person out there to help farmers get into their programs, because I saw the value of the funding sources for these producers. And so when you're out doing extension type of programming and they're looking at cover crops, you can sit down with them and say, you need to go look at an EQIP program. There's some dollars there that, that they can work with you. And they're probably not going to coach you into this program, but here's what you need to do. And so I got to be a very vocal voice for extension, or for NRCS and some of those programs. And just, like I said, that working together to get conservation on the ground was huge. Sorry if I jumped in there, but
that was great.
No, it's great. That's what we hope, is that you guys are interacting as a panel, because you have so many commonalities in your approaches. What do you, let's see, all of you were new in your position at some point, right? I mean, and Tim, it's been a little bit longer for you. Miranda, maybe a little more recent, like it has been for me. And what do you recommend as those priority steps that you take to reach growers? What would be the first thing you do, or first couple of things you do in a new position to reach growers? So let's start with, who should we start with? Maybe
go ahead,
Miranda?
Sure.
So for me, it's getting out in the state, getting out there, meeting our county agents, going to different meetings that maybe I wasn't presenting at them, but that producers, farmers, ranchers were going to be at, so I can make those connections. I did have an advantage being from the state, and going through the 4-H program, that I was familiar with a lot of people across the state, but they didn't know me as a specialist in my expertise. So getting to meet them like that and just having those informal conversations over coffee or lunch, that was very, very important. I think that's probably the most valuable thing that I did as I started. And then also reaching out to those different organizations that are doing the same type of work, or maybe have some more of those progressive ranchers, farmers. So I worked a little bit with our Grazing Land Coalition here in North Dakota, Stockman's Association, reaching out to those different groups too. So not just within extension.
Well, coffee is coming up a lot, so I think if there's one takeaway here, drink lots of coffee with farmers. Kim, this question's for you. You talked about kind of your first experience with calling farmers and it now working out. But can you? This is a great question from the audience here. Can you speak to focusing on those eager to collaborate with you versus spending the extra energy to try to maybe reach some new people?
Well, I'll talk a little bit about the second part of your question first. And what Abby had asked is, when I first started out, was to find, when you're new in a county, you don't know anybody, and how are they going to get to know you if you don't meet with them somewhere? And so what I did, and I think back when I first started extension and ended up in my own county the first time, first county I was in, after about a month, when I started feeling comfortable with, where I was at, I got in a vehicle one day and drove around the county. And if your funding allows that, I just started pulling into farms. And, I wasn't pulling into just any farm, but I'd find a farm that I felt that, was going to be someplace safe to go type of thing. Or maybe got a hold of my secretary who had been there many years and said, give me some names of some people that are, some reliable people in the county. And so I sat down with a map and I charted out where I was going to go that day. And I just started pulling into farms. And I told many young agents this, that, if you have a hard time getting a program going, don't be afraid to get in a vehicle someday and just start driving around. And I told many people that if you pull into somebody's farm that you've never had contact with before and have a conversation with them, within 2 weeks, they'll call you at your office out of the blue. And it might be somebody that you've never dealt with. And, as an agent that's been around for a while, if you ran into somebody new and met with them at their farm, within 2 weeks, they will call you. And I don't know why that works that way, but again, you got to get out and meet the people. So, you have people that are eager to work with you. If you have people that aren't eager to work with you, get out and meet with them on their turf. And it kind of comes back to what all three of us are saying. You just got to get out there and meet people. Don't be afraid to be that person in the community to jump in and lend a helping hand in something maybe unrelated to what you're working with. But people got to get to know who you are, and they got to trust you. And once they start seeing your face a lot and you're around a lot, they'll start calling you, and your programs will build off of that. And so, again, get out. Don't be afraid to get out there and meet with people. I don't know if that answers, all aspects of your question or not, but If you want to build a relationship, you got to put yourself out there a little bit and be that go-to person.
So I'm going to ask a follow-up on that as when you're, and this is from the audience here, when you're going out to make those connections and those first on-farm visits, if you're a city gal like I am from Cleveland, Ohio, and you don't really have farm boots, you wear Patagonia jackets, things like that. When you go to the farm, should I be putting on a Carhartt jacket and work boots, or what should I be wearing out there to make sure that I don't seem fake, or that, but that I also seem committed and in line with their mission? So let's see, should I ask Kim that? Because I think, Kim, you're out there talking with a lot of people.
You can never go wrong with blue jeans and a t-shirt, because yes, first impressions are going to be an impact. If you walk out there in heels or you're in some fancy clothes, you're putting a target on your back because they're already judging you. But farmers are, they're their own cup of tea. You're going to have those that are going to be ornery. You're going to have those that are willing. You're going to have those that are really shy and don't want to talk. So feeling them out, just giving them a little bit of information, hey, I'm here. I've seen this from the road. You got that big goalie in your field. I just want to let you know that I have money available right now. If this is something you're interested in, give me a call back. If this is something you'd like to see, I'd love to meet with you in your shop. Go where they're comfortable. Like Tim said, go where they're going to open up, because, I work in a government office. So nobody's comfortable coming into a government office. So I am more than happy to meet you on that tailgate. Let's go meet in your field, or, hey, can I come over to your shop? And another pointer I'm going to give out is ask questions. What would it take? Because when they talk, they're comfortable. So you got to get them to talk. What do you think about this? How do you think we should fix that? What are you comfortable with? What's an amount? Should I be looking for more funding? Definitely ask questions, because that gets them comfortable with you. So, hey, have you been farming your whole life here? Did you grow up here, or did you grow up over there? Don't be afraid to get a little personable and ask questions with them, because then you're going to stick out in their mind. And so making that impression is a big one, but knowing when to walk away at the same time. Because when you got a guy that says, them cover crops thing, that ain't gonna do nothing, you're better to leave. You gotta know, because he's gonna be the thorn in your side, and so there are some that are definitely not going to be cooperative, and you gotta walk away from those and just scratch it off. And it'll surprise you in a year or two when they come in your office and, oh, hey, I met you a while back. They'll remember you. But it's not something you want to force feed anybody. It's got to be on their own terms when you're dealing with soil health.
Well, one question that may be a good one for the chat, because I'd love to hear all three of your answers on this right after we finish here in a couple minutes. And other people's ideas from the chat are, other than coffee shops, gas stations, what are the other hubs that would be good places to form these connections? What are the other local hubs that can work? And so I'm sure a lot of you in attendance have some great ideas on this, and then obviously would love the panel to join in the chat once we conclude here in a couple minutes. But before we conclude, I think there's a really good question that, Tim, you're probably uniquely suited to answer, which is, have you overcome challenges with ag retailers that may not be on board with the science behind your message? Maybe it goes against something perhaps you're trying to sell. How do you work with an ag retailer and make sure that you're unified in your front? And I know you found a really unique one, but in general, how would you ask others to approach that?
Put me on the spot here. I think you have to, one is build that relationship with that ag retailer somehow, and then try to bring along for the ride, and maybe jump in a vehicle and go drive around and look at some things with them. Meet with some producers. Somehow you got to get on the same page with them. My local one, like you said, had I got lucky, maybe is a way to say it, but his comment was every time I put in a cover crop or do something, he says, I may not sell fertilizer, but I'm going to sell them seed. So he says, everybody thinks that I'm cutting my own throat when I'm pushing cover crops, trying to build soil health. Why would I want to build soil health? Because then I don't get to sell fertilizer. He said, don't realize, he said, there's more of a markup in this side of it. So he said, I get to sell them seed. So, that was kind of his comment is what he said, my my whole mission as an agronomist is to make more money for the farmer. And so he always looked at it like that. If I can make more money for the farmer, I make more money for my business. And so if you got an agronomist that's maybe not on board, somehow you got to figure out a way to start working with him. And maybe it's not on cover crops. Maybe it's not on soil health. Maybe it's on some other aspect of his job, his business that Extension can come in and help out with a little bit. Answering some questions somewhere, putting on a producer meeting, and kind of helping with his logistics, but somehow build that relationship with them.
Well, Kim and Miranda and Tim, thank you very, very much. Abby, what are your kind of takeaways from this panel?
I think it comes back to, again, just being yourself, being present, being out there, finding different ways to be out there that suit the farmer, always thinking about what the farmer needs or what the retailer needs, or, how to mold yourself into those positions to be a resource. Anything that you take away too, or?
Yeah, it gets back to showing up consistently. We talked about in social media. We talked about, the 80-20 about, both personal and professional. If you're going to show up at the coffee shop every day, it's going to mix the personal and professional.